priorities and a travel schedule designed to highlight the important themes and actions I wanted to pursue. Overall, not bad for less than a month on the job. Or so I thought. Just then, it seemed like all hell broke loose. You see, while working in my palatial office overlooking the Potomac River and the monuments of Washington, I received a classified email. Bad news. There had been an irregularity in personnel testing of one of the units out west in charge of our nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles. Some of the young officers, called missileers, who stood watch over these important and destructive weapons, were found to have cheated on a basic proficiency exam. The whole thing became known during a drug investigation when cell phones were confiscated. It was discovered that test answers had been passed by some in the unit to others. Although the information was sketchy at this time, I knew the situation was serious. Nuclear weapons are obviously the most catastrophically destructive weapons in the U.S. arsenal. In light of the information I just learned, I questioned, is the nuclear enterprise safe and secure? If young missileers cheated on exams, and if some were taking drugs, did this mean they were unfamiliar and unable to perform their duty should a real-world event present itself? I wasn't immediately sure what to do about this firestorm on the horizon, but I did know that it was up to me to figure it out, and fast. As I said, I had some hesitation about taking on the assignment of Secretary of the Air Force. To be sure, I was flattered by President Obama's offer. I had devoted my entire professional life to the national security of the United States, and being Secretary of the Air Force was, in many ways, a dream come true. And let's face it, it's hard to turn down the President of the United States. But I knew the transitioning from my job at SAIC, a Fortune 500 government contractor where I led a $2 billion unit, to a government position would be tough and risky. First, I had worked hard to get where I was at SAIC, one of the most senior leaders of the company, and one of the few senior women, responsible for roughly 8,700 employees who supported government customers in areas like hardware integration, software development, and logistics management. I loved what I was doing and was not anxious to give it up. Although I did not have an MBA, I had become a successful businesswoman, achieving or exceeding my goals for growth, profitability, program excellence, customer satisfaction, and employee engagement. Before SAIC, I also had a successful government career. In the 1990s, I served as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs, one of a handful of top policy advisors to the Secretary of Defense, so I was no stranger to the Pentagon. Talk about being one of the few senior women in a sea of male colleagues. The Pentagon was it in those days. And the fact that I was young, 34 years old, and had never served in uniform set me apart even more. Despite these challenges, during the 5 years I served in that job, I led a major transformation on how our part-time forces, the National Guard and Reserves, were utilized within the military. They went from being considered weekend warriors who were called upon only during periods of all-out war to integral operational assets available in day-to-day operations short of war. I was also very familiar with the operations of the U.S. Congress and the relationship Congress has with the executive branch. That's because I worked for one of the major defense committees, the House Armed Services Committee, for 10 years. I started out as an intern and worked my way up to one of the most senior staff positions. I assisted the powerful committee chair with a host of issues, ranging from personnel issues to weapons procurement. The bottom line for me at this point in my life was that I was comfortable in my skin and with what I had already achieved in both government and business. I felt accomplished and personally fulfilled by my work, and I saw myself remaining in the business world until my eventual retirement. Until, that is, President Obama's offer to lead the Air Force came along. Then I had to ask myself, do you really want to risk a return to the Pentagon? There were some serious drawbacks to consider. First, I would have to say hello to a big pay cut if I returned to government. My annual compensation at SAIC was way more than I ever dreamed possible in my younger years, and I had acquired stock and stock options that I knew would have to be divested or forfeited. Second, I would have to come back up to speed on old issues and learn completely new ones. I'm talking about policy matters ranging from personnel and compensation issues affecting members of the military, a subject I was well versed in but dated, to the intricacies of new weapons systems like the F-35 fighter aircraft, something I knew relatively little.